Sleep is a major factor within a survival situation, any survival situation. If you're not getting good sleep, you will be psychologically unwell. Many mentally or many symptoms pertaining to mental illness occur just because you're not getting enough sleep. It doesn't make you mentally ill. It just means your brain is not mentally healthy because soon as good sleep goes out the window, so does your mental stability, so does most of your proper mental functions, and you start drifting off. So sleep, quality sleep, and the right length of sleep is critical in a survival situation. Absolutely critical. You need to get more than any situation, especially in a survival situation, you need to get the best sleep of your life. It might seem hard because of what you're faced with. It might be troubling to get to sleep because of all the seeming demons around you that are survival. But it's quite the opposite of what needs to be done. That is, it's not being sleep deprived that needs to be done. You need to be getting better sleep than you've ever had in your life. And there are a few tricks to do it. Now, one thing people are afraid of if faced with a survival situation is that if they sleep, what happens if something bad happens? Hence why a lot of people experience troubled sleep, if getting any sleep at all, during a survival situation. Well, there are ways to mitigate those worries, as some of them can be genuine worries. Okay, this is one of the reasons too why urban survival is a much better setting than wilderness survival. In a forest, for instance, you can generally sleep safe if you put a hammock high in a tree, or if you make a structure high in the tree to sleep on. They have their flaws though, because they can fail and you can hit the floor. You can even fall on something sharp, and that's no good. You can make a raised bed, which will keep you away from snakes, but that doesn't do much for other people wandering through the forest in a survival situation, although it's not very likely people will stumble across you very often in a wilderness situation in the forest. So keeping away from snakes, at least in Australia, is an idea, as well as crocodiles if you're up north. Though they tend to lurk around rivers, which you shouldn't sleep around. I guess anywhere else around the world, you'd want to keep somewhere where there aren't wild animals, especially bears, or if in Africa, really violent lions and cheetahs and all that sort of stuff. But you're getting my point. In the wilderness, there's a lot of things to be careful of, and sleeping may mean the difference between life and death in many wilderness environments. If there are wild animals around, and if there are people around, which is less of a worry, it's more the animals. Um, but an urban survival setting gives you so many options. Okay, now sleeping in a roof cavity is generally dangerous because of all the toxic materials in there. You can die just doing that. But there are many places to secrete yourself and sleep in an urban survival situation that no one will suspect you. Now, note that these techniques are probably everything but homelessness, because in homelessness, where society is functioning as per normal, you're not really trying to hide from anybody or not get killed by another violent person. You're just homeless. But in major catastrophes, in really shit hits the fan events, the worst part of the spectrum of urban survival situations, then you may want to ensure that you can sleep without being disturbed from another person, especially one who may want to harm you or steal stuff from you, steal your pack, and all that sort of stuff. So to get that vital sleep, which is the whole point of all this isn't just for the technique, it's to ensure that you get that vital sleep. You can execute techniques that are almost bulletproof. I mean, ultimately, nothing is bulletproof per se, but that's what bulletproof is. You know, as secure can be. So you could sleep under a house. That generally doesn't pose much dangers, unless dogs live there and you don't know the dogs, which is not that common in urban survival situations. You'll be surprised. There are more places that don't have dogs than do have dogs. And if you find a suitable place that you can go under the house, you're probably not going to find dogs there, but I'm sure you can check anyway. So you can rig your tent, sleeping bag, or whatever you want to, all your warm stuff, and sleep under the house if you haven't got a stable house to sleep in during those really bad situations. You could secrete yourself in a vehicle. You could secrete yourself in a dog kennel, although most aren't that big, but you get my point. You could secrete yourself in many places where people can't disturb your sleep. Now, in a shit hits the fan scenario, in the worst forms of urban survival, you'll probably find a house that is vacant, but you won't be. You shouldn't find yourself surprised if somebody else comes upon it and tries to enter it. So that's what I mean by getting quality sleep and having special techniques to ensure that sleep, if it's vital. Now, if you happen to find a place in the worst forms of urban survival, which would be your warfare, your pandemics, just really shit hits the fan events, then you can rig tripwire systems. You can make makeshift alarms. They're very easy. You just thin wire, thin cord, thin anything. You can even strip fucking electrical wire to do it. You tie it to something that makes a bell noise in your room. As soon as somebody trips that, even at the other end of the house, you're alerted to somebody coming in the house. You can even tie it against entry points. So if a person comes through a particular entry point, they'll make a noise there. But note that a lot of people may come through a window or somewhere else you don't expect. So you'd have to do it at every entry point. But that's if you're going to stay there for the long term. So sleep is essential, and they are generally techniques you'd use if alone. If not alone, it's just a matter of rotating shift. Okay, I'm going to sleep for 7 hours. I want that 6 to 7 hours of sleep. I've got to have it. That's pretty much it. So I'm staying awake at this time and sleeping at this time. You're staying awake at this time and sleeping at this time. And if it's 2 people, then it's pretty much going to be like, I shouldn't use the sex move 69. It's going to be back to front. You're gonna 69 your time. One person's going to be on the other end of the day, and the other person's going to be on the other end of the day, which may suck to some extent because you'll only get a small window of 8 hours where both of you are awake, and it'll usually be where one's more tired and one's more awake. But you still need to do that, so you'll still need to rotate shifts. That just takes out all the problems because one person's awake and can alert the other person. And then when you start having more than 3 or 4 or 5 people, note that you shouldn't really have a team of more than 5 people. That just starts to get out of hand. It's just too big a team. But when you have about 3 or 4 people, which is the perfect amount in a survival situation, you can have 5 or 6 if it's your family and all that. But when you have 3 or more, then that rotation just becomes all the more easier. One person there will almost always be someone awake. And you can start rotating shifts to ensure you get that critical sleep. So you must understand that good survival psychology depends on the best sleep of your life during a survival situation. And funnily enough, in the last 10 months, I've been getting the best sleep of my life every night without fail. 6 minimum, not even 6. I should say much more than 6, 7 or 8 hours minimum. I don't usually sleep more than 9 hours. It's too much. But between 7 and 9 hours every night in quality, just like a baby. Best dreams, but it's just comfortable because I know how important that sleep is so I can perform in the day. And it really has boosted my levels of happiness. It really has given me that mental tranquility, that balance. Wow, I can't believe I'm saying that. I should say, I'm amazed I'm saying that. I've really come into myself. I'm really at harmony. Technically in the worst position possible, but aren't I making a fucking good time out of it? Best experience of my life by far. And I shouldn't say I can't believe I'm saying this. I should say I'm amazed I'm saying this, but I don't want it to ever end. I actually fucking love it. I really enjoy making this course, and it's good quality. This is the sort of shit you pay a couple of $100 for. This is real life experience. This is going to qualify you to survive any urban catastrophe if you watch it as it's supposed to be watched from start to end. Okay, now understand that your sleep is critical. Your sleep is absolutely critical to the success of your survival experience, due to the fact you need to be psychologically turned on. It's that simple. And I've given you a few hints of how to secrete yourself if alone, and what to do if you've got and those secretion methods are only insofar you haven't got a permanent place, or at least a semi-permanent place, I should say. And then I've given you a hint on what to do if, I should say, I've given you instruction. Then none of those things are hints. It's just the way I speak. I've given you instruction on what you should do if you've got a place to yourself and are alone. But then I've also told you what you should do if you've got a whole bunch of people in rotating shift. So it is that simple. And what I'll also say is you need to have warm clothes, warm blankets, and just a very comfy spot. Okay, and look, if you don't have the most comfortable of equipment, just make it as comfortable as possible, because your sleep is of paramount importance in a survival situation.